Okay, should call the meeting to order, 6:06. One is approval of the agenda.
I do not have late items.
I'll move to approve.
Second. Item 2 is adoption of the minutes. Anyone had a chance to take a look? I had one area I was confused, and that was where I was talking. That was under the Ferry Advisory Committee. The chair reviewed the letter from the commissioner with BC Ferries, which resulted in a pared down list of review criteria, which he will share when approved. I don't know.
That's a fiction.
I don't know, we had a meeting where we talked about the action items.
Okay.
For
The
Bowen
letter.
Island. I think the letter was like a point of information, like the commissioner did send a letter, we had talked about a lot of those issues as part of the FAC. But the thing that was reviewed recently with BC Ferries was the action item list for Bowen Island.
Okay,
Which would have been the basis for that engagement session they had
okay,
last week. The week
Okay.
before. Other than that, I'm okay with minutes.
okay. As amended,
Second or first? Okay, item 3, no public comments.
no,
Okay, item 4, business arising from the minutes, Rural Transit Solutions Fund.
so I just put Councilor Getty and Wake's names there because you guys are working on it, and your name also because you provided the problem statement. I'm not sure who to believe that, but your fingerprints are all on it.
So this came up at the strategic planning closed committee of the whole meeting that council had. And one of the points that got released from that is to the effect that correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, the council supports an application, but there's no staff time. So if an application is going to be made, then we have to figure out some time and energy and interest in doing it within the committee, and then the staff can double check that. Drew, you might be correcting me here, but the staff would look at the whatever proposal that we came up with and maybe suggest changes or amendments, and then ultimately it would be staff that would have to supervise it if we were successful.
And they'd have to submit it. We submit it to us.
Right. Yes.
You and
No,
submit.
that sounds correct.
We know what the outline of the submittal would look like?
No, that was part of one of the steps was defining the problem. So that's the discussion about the problem statement that you wrote. And then, well, I didn't bring my notes from the last meeting, but then we have to figure out what we need to work on a proposal.
I had a look through the guide to applying, which is a PDF, but been downloaded for some reason. Well, I could only print it out from HTML. Never works on my computer, so. But I think to be able to get PDF copy of that thing, and it looks fairly involved. And I guess my concern is where we're gonna get the horsepower and expertise to do that amongst us.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a much slower process than if it was on somebody, you know, anybody's work plan is packed, so,
Right.
you know, whoever, and however we do it. But I think, like Tyler said the last meeting, we have to focus on the problem statement. and what it is that we want to put forward. And then we'll, depending on who's got energy and interest, see if we can pull something off. If we don't, then it doesn't go ahead.
I guess I was just wondering, is it feasible that we could pull off the application? Or is it so daunting that there's not a chance? It's,
I don't know. The, Mayor Leonard did suggest, sort of, I can't remember if this was before or after we started talking about this. But he thought perhaps, a transportation summit here on Bowen with BC Ferries, TransLink, the Bowen Transportation Society, this committee. Because if we had, I think his idea was if we had everybody around the table, then maybe we could work together and find some solutions. So it's not everybody saying, well, you should do this and you should.
that's a nice idea. I've got zero confidence that anything different is ever going to happen by talking with those four groups. Like, it's just, ferries have a very strict mandate. There are actions happening in the province right now, like the province started their visioning exercise, which the engagement on Bowen last week was part of, which is to try and set priorities across the system. And some of the topics that are floating around is like, what is the role BC Ferries fills within the province? Is it just moving cars on car ferries and passengers are a second thought, or should they be focusing on moving people and integration? But ultimately, that's going to come to a report, and the report is going to go back to the province saying, this is what your people think you should do. And the province has to make a funding decision and a direction. And if they don't make a funding decision and a direction that increases funding to BC Ferries and increases their mandate, absolutely nothing is changing. Like, it's just dead in the water. BC Ferries provides the system they do now. And I think the biggest thing that hurts us within those confines is the fact that they can't meet a schedule at all. And then our whole system is built around their schedule. So I still think it's a good idea to focus on trying to make our case in an eloquent and educated manner, which I thought this endeavor could, like, the outcome of that could be our explanation of what it is that's destroying transportation on Bowen Island. And there's this funding out there to help put it together. And if we got that together, then maybe you could make a pitch to the province to say, like, we're not just complaining in general about the fact that we live on an island. Like, there's a very kind of, well, the consultants would put together what is the thing that we need to work on, whether that's BC Ferries schedule or capacity or our own funding for our own transportation. But I don't think it's going to be fixed by sitting them in a room and letting them all agree that the status quo is what they're mandated to do. Because we've heard the answers, like the integration, the buses moved to target 15-minute intervals. They're not going to align schedules. I just don't see it. I don't see where they're going to move. So we could work on the problem statement. I think my own, like, after I blurted down some words and thought about it, it seemed like their schedule was the biggest thing. The fact that we're built around the ferry schedule and the fact that the ferry schedule is non-functional were kind of the biggest thing that affects us as a community that might be different than just ferry capacity always being insufficient during peak travel, which is kind of something that will never change. Like, our ferry system will never be able to accommodate peak travel because the cost of doing so is so astronomical. And the targets that BC Ferries is talking about in the visioning exercise are actually what we experience right now. So if that's what they settled on, we're not going anywhere. Like, if a 2-hour wait at a terminal is acceptable during peak season as part of BC Ferries' mandate, well, that's kind of what we see. 2 hours, you miss the ferry you're trying to catch, you catch the next one, you're there for 2 hours.
So is the question on the table whether the committee is willing to take the application forward? And
Guess so, yeah.
if council said, great, you do it. And you gotta set up an account on the portal to the fund and go, I haven't looked at it, but
Yeah,
And it's-
that's all in the instructions I have today.
does it look doable
Well,
on a scale of 1 to 10?
I didn't spend enough time looking at it to know how doable it is.
Do you have the application, Patrick? No, you applied for the capital projects stream.
That's quite a bit different.
Yeah.
CB is quite a bit different. I'm not familiar with the application requirements for the design stream. But
Yeah, and depending
Quite a
on
bit
how
similar.
many partners municipality we're looking for in it, there are a number of supporting documents that are indicating the application guidelines. That would take time. It may be done. You were, in the last meeting, you wanted to know whether BC Transit or TransLink, BC Ferries or TransLink needed to have a supportive letter.
Yeah,
Did they give such a thing?
I think we have to phrase the question in terms of, this is what we're looking for, to participate in this. Or to, provide this, or to whatever, and, if we were going to talk about the problem statement.
Do you want me to put it out? Would you like me to put it on the screen?
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? Okay, not there yet.
If we are, then I think that needs expanding. Because I think that my focus is more the transit on the island. And getting cars off the ferry somehow, right? Figuring out and getting some planning help or consultant help in terms of working with, like, the transportation plan that Metro did for the park. And the one that we did something in terms of people going across tickers on the road or something that was happening at the same time, that I remember asking to expand
that was part of the transportation
Okay.
development plan, or some traffic counts.
Yeah. So in terms of trying to figure out, what the problem is with getting people out of cars and getting fewer cars onto the ferry, it seems to me that it might help peak time, although that's mostly people coming, all the visitors. That's a huge increase over the summer season, but figuring out, post-COVID and all the behavior that started off in terms of everybody isolating in their own cars, and figuring out, my understanding is that Bowen Transit was trying to talk to TransLink in terms of using some of their rolling stock. And, there's a tour of that's being offered to elected officials from UBCM in terms of going out and looking at all of the different, someplace out in Richmond, the Hamilton, something around the depot that has been taken over all the stock from North Van and from Quitman, I think. And so they've got a massive place out in Richmond where they service all the vehicles and store all the ones that they've got. Apparently they've got some astronomical number of buses that are little different sizes that are sitting there. So figuring out what the components are to get people that are sort of out towards the golf course, or maybe out towards all the different routes that potentially could turn up. We had a thing in front of council today with a rezoning for IDLC that's out at Roger Curtis, and that, the parents are carpooling, and sometimes the bus can get the kids a little bit closer to DC Road, and that helps with transportation, and just figuring out a needs assessment and whether or not the on-demand service would make a big difference or not, and coming up with potentially some solutions to make it lesser greenhouse gases, fewer cars on the road, you know, less interface with all of the increases in bike users, the electric bike users, and just do something on island. Because the problem that I had with yours, Tyler, was that the solutions have to come from all these other big entities that we don't have any leverage with, and that they are non-responsive. You know, if Greenland comes in, that's wonderful. You know, and if we can figure out how to do the infrastructure down at Seymour, like they're suggesting, that's fantastic. You know, a lot of big picture problems.
So no, I agree. Skipping ahead from defending that to your plan. So we're putting out an application for funding to do a study. The outcome of that study could be either something actionable by Bowen, or it's something else that we talk to other groups about. So if we go the Bowen route and focus on something that we're going to action on island, do we have any idea of where we think that would go? Like, or if it's shuttle service, would we push that back to TransLink to try and get our shuttle service changed? Or are we trying to make minor adjustments? I think that the outcome of this work is study. It's not a service or any changes to what we're doing. So where is a study the most useful? And if we think it is for shaping our on-island service, then that's the way we should go, because it's an easier conversation to have, and it's very focused, which makes it easier to write. If we don't see an outcome there, then I would defend the idea of the grandiose argument, because all we're getting is planning. And if we can take that planning to these partners who are not helping us, like we're not changing anything, they haven't for my whole life. So if talking to them and getting them to talk to each other doesn't produce results, maybe a plan that clearly puts out is a better way of making that case. And that was my original thinking. However, going through the exercise of trying to write a problem statement, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's the schedule makes it untenable to take the bus.
Mhm.
Like the lack of connections, the wait times, like that's why it's really hard to get out of your car and get downtown and get back. So like in the summer, it's not, if you could line it up, it's not that bad. If you could just get on a bus, wait 5 minutes for a ferry, cross the ferry, and then take a bus on this side, it would be a pretty painless commute. But it's when it all falls apart that people just tear their hair out. So I'd be happy to refocus on something if we think that the outcome of this process is the most beneficial.
Then maybe one of the things we're looking for is to see what the options are in terms of having something that's more localized. So that, you know, if we're handing it off to TransLink and they're in a budget crunch and they don't want to manage tiny little projects, and, you know, then what are the options? Because we've got a service from TransLink, does that preclude us from doing anything that is private and local and more localized? Whatever the potential options might be, whether that's Bowen Transit or whether that's, I don't know, you know, another private operator that leases equipment from transit at some fabulous rate. I don't know. And I think that we don't have staff time to research all of the potential, you know, how do we deal with this? We can identify the problem maybe, and then, you know, thinking of options outside the box. I think that's a community thing. And that to me means getting a consultant or someone to help, someone that has training in transportation issues to help with, you know, come up with some ideas and options so that maybe, I don't know, however long these, let's say a year, trying to organize community meetings and talking to suppliers and figuring out all the finances of it, then coming up with, I mean, yours is, the thing that jumped out at me with your problem statement was, you know, we've got an election coming up, and there's some political decisions that have to go on here, right? So that if all of the coastal communities are suffering, Langdale's certainly suffering the same or more than we are, same issues. And, you know, if we've got some sort of a strategy in terms of the local ferry advisory committees meeting and talking and working up some sort of a strategy for questions for the politicians existing in the proposed, whether they end up in opposition or in power. That might be interesting. Right? Because everyone keeps saying, go to the minister, it's not our problem. Go talk to
Yeah.
the minister, it's not our problem.
But the best pitch we can make is a UBCM quick meeting. Like, there's no way to clearly illustrate what's going wrong in people's day-to-day lives to the people making the decision. They just hear negative feedback.
Right.
So I don't like, we're clearly not, so great.
Just a proposed path forward. If the agenda item on the table is does this committee want to undertake an application to the fund?
So just answer the question. Do you have a follow-up, or you just?
Well, yeah,
We answer that question.
My proposal would be, I think. If council has indicated that the committee can take it on as they want. It would seem we don't have all the information, we don't have the application form in front of us, or any way to access it. But it might be an action, it might be to undertake that, register on the portal, get the application, look at the application between now and the next meeting, and determine whether this committee has the resources to undertake an application. And we could kind of notionally say the committee could go forward, subject to determining that it was doable. If it's a monster and it's having you hire a consultant to do your application, then we might say it's a great idea, we just don't have the.
I don't think it's a monster. I mean, we did the capital project stream of the same grant program, and
How was it?
it wasn't that onerous.
Yeah.
To fill out the application. And it's unlikely that the smaller funding stream would be
Yep.
one.
And the problem statement is good job. And that's a good starting point.
Well, I think I agree that like our actions to continue this forward could be to map out what's required with the application. I think the problem statement and the different ways you could go probably need to be explored. And I would suggest that we explore them in what loosely does the problem sound like, but also where do we think the outcome is for Bowen Island? Like, we're getting a document, and what is that document? What is the goal of that document that we're paying for as far as changes? And I bet that would give us the ability to evaluate the ideas just by seeing where we think we're going to go. If we're going to use it to promote our case and amongst the bigger fish, then that's one place it can go. If it's to restructure our transit system, then that's a different place we could go. And I think knowing that would help us do a better job of the whole thing.
I agree.
Well, and when I just in listening to the last meeting, it sounds as though, and I think you summed it up well, Tyler, was that there is a constellation of agencies and groups, and there doesn't seem to be a coordinated plan, notwithstanding that we have a transportation plan. It's a complex issue. The problem statement lays that out. And that the statement at the end of that, I don't know, the problem statement is not the application. But the seeks to further define the breakdown of the current transportation structure and identify a high-level strategy to pursue. These would be the outcomes, improve the system, redundancy, user experience, specifically during peak season. That could be the object of a study. And I listened to the last meeting. It didn't sound like it was, we need to figure out how to run shuttles. We need to figure out how, it sounded like there was a more comprehensive approach so that people could have in their hands a well put together take of what the problem is and potential, then you list down potential outcomes to cover, not outcomes, those would be deliverables.
Yeah, well, that is, I mean, obviously sculpted with the current chip on my shoulder as far as transportation goes, which is the fact that we get bounced around.
Yeah.
And nobody says, okay, well, here is what's going to happen to Bowen in the next 20 years. It's just like an afterthought. Like everyone develops their policies and how they land on us is kind of a mix and match. I would love to see something out there that's just a, hey, this is where we're going. And that's kind of where I was coming from with that. This could be a step towards identifying what's wrong and where we need to go to make changes. But there's also other ways we could go that I think would work.
Well, I think you're getting at what they're asking. So I'm in section 2 of the application here, project rationale. Please provide a detailed description of your planning project and what you expect to achieve. Please choose an option from the drop-down menu which best describes the nature of your planning project. Discovering transit needs in your community, developing right fit solutions, defining the implement. So it's very much a sort of qualitative thing where they're basically asking us to lay out what we expect to get that will make it work. And I think probably the problem statement fits in there, but
You find that, like you've got a PDF of that now?
well, it's not a PDF, it's a website.
Yeah, this is the application guide.
Yeah.
I think is what it's telling you. This is not the application itself. You have to sign out of the portal. I don't know, the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Anyway, it's through their whole online portal.
We probably have a number already if you've already. Lines. It's.
Yeah, enter applicant portal.
Can I? Offer up, some, I'd very much like to work on this, right? I think this is important. It's one of the things that I'd like to put as a personal priority. So, and we have on this without committee meetings. At least the municipal ones. So, I'd be happy to put it on myself for some sort of a work through some of this and get feedback as much as possible from the other members of the committee and see if we've got, our next meeting in September. So that would give me some time, hopefully, to put some work into this and see if there's, get some, I'd love to get ideas from people in terms of what you think the transportation issues are that you experience, that you would like, some resolution to, whether or not we actually come up with the answers at this point. But, where the bottlenecks are and where the issues are for people. So.
Question,
Can I offer that up?
you have an online co-authoring platform, Google Doc?
Why, thank you for asking, sir. We've just developed one. It's SharePoint.
Tell me, does the
Yeah, there has been it's tough because it's government and security having documents floating around, but we did develop one. I think it's primarily for use with the planning department right now, but I've asked for access because of all of you people and your great work. I haven't quite gotten to do it yet, but in a couple of days, so get something
Kelly and
going.
I were doing that with the policy stuff with the joint management committee.
Was it with SharePoint?
Not sure, I think so.
Okay.
SharePoint's just Microsoft.
Yeah, it's just
environment.
Teams.
But I think the idea is that there's like you and Lee can do that with drafts, and then he's gonna come out with something that goes to council. What we're finding is we end up with stuff being left there. Well, like people having access to confidential information sometimes can happen.
Well,
There's also staff leaving, and we can't find stuff when it's there and it's on there, like they've made their own accounts. So this is like a more monitored version.
I didn't get access. I'm only a counselor. So I had to download and figure out how to get, a Word document. But it can be done.
Yeah, that's what I accidentally sent you guys, was my work SharePoint that I had written it on, but you were all denied access. Okay, well, let's make the action item for the next 2 months to be how do we want to how do we want to describe the application evaluation, like start fleshing out the framework for the application or the effort involved?
Yeah.
Like that, and then,
Sorry, start fleshing out, what's the action?
The effort required,
Okay,
the work to be done. Figure out work done. There's some BIM language.
And to Ian's point, open up a portal, get registered, so that we can then get the application.
And it sounds as though prior to that, we would need to have, that would be the template so that we can download the sections that you have to.
Oh, you know how to do
Then you could dump that into, to on OneDrive or SharePoint or Google, whatever.
but our steps here will be valid for 2 months because we're not meeting till September, so.
Yeah.
We have that one. We need to expand the possible problem statements to cover whatever issues the group generates.
We see if the, I think it's good, and reading the application guide, I think it will provide a good amount of the kind of the preface, the kind of setting the table of the problem. We could, if you wanted to circulate this, we could provide feedback to you. I mean, it's certainly,
this?
if you want,
let's put it already then.
The problem
Do
statement,
it.
yeah.
yeah, you can provide as much feedback.
Well, I suppose, let's wait until we see what the
Oh.
application portal needs.
Yeah.
And then we can edit this to be a good fit to drop into that in some manner.
Yeah, that was not intended to be anywhere near a finished product. It's just blurting out a first crack at it because that's the easiest way for us to pick it apart and figure out what it looks like in the end. So it's the form, I just started rambling based on what a normal call for action from consultants looks like. And there's a little bit of background, there's a little bit of establishing priorities, and then you finish off with what you expect a consultant to hand you at the end. So I think if we follow that kind of framework, you will get a useful, hopefully, answer to the problem. But I'd be happy to do this again for the shuttle, or like it's just start typing and see what you get.
It's kind of like there's 3 areas. There's on the island, there's across the house town, and then there's in town. Right? So I think that we can probably have some good ideas, might be workable. And whether or not you've got support for it.
Okay, well, we don't do in town. Because like transportation strictly over there, no one's gonna listen to us about, so.
You can
It's
make suggestions. I've always wanted the Lonsdale's bus.
So we can do the on-island version and then the cross-house sound version at a minimum.
Yeah.
So we'll get an on-island problem statement. And then we'll develop the crossing house sound problem statement. We'll get the application effort and outline established. And that sounds like plan for the next 2 months.
Yeah. Really.
Commit to using one of our periodic loads each week.
Ah,
Yeah,
there you go.
BC is donating lots of our time.
that's the only reason I have this laptop is for all the time wasted sitting there. Okay, well, I think timing wise, it's time to move on.
You want to go through this?
I don't want to go through the whole document.
Okay.
People,
Just look at all this work done by our esteemed volunteers. Okay.
okay, item 5. Ferry updates. The FAC hasn't met and won't until after the summer, so there's no update from the FAC as far as meetings goes. There is the topic of purchasing tickets on the ferry with an experience card. That's being discussed amongst the FAC, and the plan is to put forward a request to BC Ferries to reconsider that. BC Ferries engagement update. I wasn't able to attend the On Bowen event. I'm not sure if anybody here was. And
I can, the one that, yeah.
yeah,
And one of my questions is, because I didn't stay right till the end, but they indicated, the facilitator indicated that they would be taking what they heard, and they were doing a pretty good job of documenting what they heard. They would take that back to BC Ferries, and then there would be a response. But I don't know when that's gonna be, or
yeah, I haven't received an update or anything there, but I can. I'll definitely ask them before our next meeting. There's actually going to be an event in the summer. And I can't remember if it's July or August. It's around the AGM for BC Ferries. All the FAC chairs will get together as part of a multi-day extension of that project. So the idea is establishing priorities between the ferry system as a whole, opposed to route level priorities. So my intention is to attend that, and I'll have to make a pitch for what I think the system-wide priorities are from a Bowen Island perspective. And that those conversations get interesting because we're not the worse off route by any metric. So making it, those cases are difficult, where timeliness is pretty bad on our route. So that's probably the best system-wide priority that would benefit us is improving timeliness, like meeting their schedule. But I'd be open to comment on that if you had any feedback, especially from the event.
Is there another online survey? I thought I saw something. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's fairly short. I kind of whipped through it.
Yeah, but it acts as sort of a feedback loop. We heard this from our engagement process. Do you agree? How would you prioritize 1, 2, 3, 4 and other comments? So at least it doesn't sort of feel like a wall. It feels a little reciprocal.
So we should try to encourage people to
Yeah,
take that.
and I mean, they're the recognizable, why don't you stay on your schedule kind of
Yeah.
topics.
I guess that'll be good feedback going into that meeting. The BC Ferries ticketing and process communications. I went back to my notes because I had serious deja vu after that conversation. We've asked BC Ferries for explanations for repeat topics before, and they were always willing in the meeting to do it. But over the years, it's become apparent that outward facing communications regarding their procedures never happens. And I think, I'm guessing here, but I think it's probably they don't want to publicly commit to doing it exactly one way because everything's got gray area and they do change the way they do things slightly. Like I used to be told that our ferry was never held for a bigger ferry. It was always first come, first serve. And then last summer, the people at the operations center said, well, it's not always that case. So that I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere asking for a written explanation, but the idea about having a central location where some of these repeat topics is just written down, even if I was to do it and run it by BC Ferries and just say, hey, these are the things we keep talking about. And I'm going to keep them here, like just for anyone to read who has these questions, like a Bowen FAC frequently asked questions type thing. So I don't know where I would find the time to do that right now, but that seems like a good path to actually getting that kind of communication out there. Because I don't think they're going to write you anything.
The question, and this is a bit of a tangential question, is there, and I, if I were closer to what's happening at the ferries, I would know, but there are facts, FACs across all coastal communities.
Yeah.
I would presume in some form or another. Is there any overarching formal or informal body that connects a representative from all of those advisory committees to chair?
All the chairs are connected. And so there's frequent communication across the FACs through the chairs. So, yeah, regularly we're in discussion, and the AGM has an FAC chairs component to it. It's
Yep.
often 2 or 3 days long. And in the past, there's been meetings with these FAC chairs across the system with all sorts of different parties. So the commissioner, the 2 ferry boards, the authority board and the service board, the union rep, the communications people, touring the operations center, like it's multiple days of working on a system-wide level. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Ah,
Sorry. A lot of work.
So is the issue with this, purchasing tickets on the ferry, is that you can purchase a ticket, but you can't use your experience card?
Yeah.
Okay, and there's no way to get credit for that after the fact?
Well, they've been kind of loosely letting you do it for years. So sometimes if you're on a bigger ferry, if you're holding an experience card, they'll be like, oh, you've got an experience card, and they'll charge you less.
Yeah.
So it seems like somebody in accounting has said, hey, this isn't formal enough, and has issued this email giving fresh instruction to not do it system-wide.
Yeah.
And for occasional users, it's a mild inconvenience, but there's definitely people who do this all the time. And it makes sense that it's often around escorting kids back and forth. So for that alone, I'd like to push back and say they have to find a way around this.
Is there an argument with respect to accessibility? So the very idea of having to run up to the ticket booth and run back and miss the ferry. It's like, I'm not running anymore these days, right? So it's like, what about people that have mobility issues?
Well, even if you're a world-class sprinter, you can't do it because the policy, even if they're off schedule, is to cut it off when the boat hits the dock. So your 10-minute cutoff is clued in or been engaged before you even have a chance. If you're getting a return ticket specifically. So the case for the return ticket seems very strong to me because you don't have an option.
Yeah.
The case for arguing for transfers is a little bit less clear cut because the number of times you don't have time to go to the gate and back when they're that tight, probably not very frequent. So I think I would focus my letter on the return ticket aspect of it. But obviously there's a benefit to everyone system-wide if you can make the transfers. But across the different routes, there's not even that many terminals where this could be an issue for people because you need a terminal with multiple sailings all in the same building. So I think there's only 3 terminals that are like that across the system. And you need to be walking off one onto another. So there were some suggestions from the FAC to make it a letter to BC Ferries from all the FACs, but I kind of think the issue is going to end up being more Horseshoe Bay and Bowen Island, and you might be going from one to another. Anything else on ferries? Okay, we have staff updates, 5.2.
Things have been moving slower than we hoped on multi-use path extension. The main issue is that we need more money. We have some grant funding from TransLink and from the BC Active Transportation Grant Program. We've applied to the capital stream of the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. And our focus now is to make sure that we build some pieces of the path that enable us to use our grant funding that we do have in time before it expires. So this year, we're just gonna be doing the off-road portion past Artisan Lane, about 320 meters. So it's may seem like a small step, but it enables us to use the grant funding that we do have. And then past that point requires a realignment of Grafton Road. And it's a substantial expense that we don't have enough funding to execute right now. So we would apply for the next round of the BIMTAC grant to extend up to Charlie's Lane. We do have some grant funding that's devoted to the Charlie's Lane to Grafton Lake section. We asked the funding agency if we could repurpose that to help us finish the section up to Charlie's Lane, and they weren't receptive to that. So we're just gonna have to, we're gonna have to build a smaller piece between Charlie's Lane and Grafton Lake, and apply for the funding to piece it all together. It's not gonna happen this year or next year, but hopefully the following year we'll have enough funds available to make the connection up to Grafton Lake, and that should line up with approximately when the developer of the Grafton Lake lands would be doing the piece at Harding Road. So that's in general where things are going, things are at. All things back. Questions?
Any further thought to marking the multi-use path? in that
Yes,
facility?
we will do that. We just haven't done it yet. I think it's definitely something that's needed. We'll get on it.
That's good. Any questions?
Do you need direction from council for that? Or is it?
I don't
We
think so.
sort of just asked about it from this committee, right?
Yeah. I don't think so.
I mean, that's good.
Unless you feel differently. But it's an operational need that act on.
Can you let us know if that becomes an issue? So if, Public Works says that they need to have, some direction or some whatever, right? Then that's what the councilors are here for.
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay.
And then was there, Drew circulated something regarding the active transportation plan, but we shelved it for today?
No,
No,
I think you're here to tell you, yeah.
I'm here. I didn't circulate anything yet. Basically, I just gonna give an update that, so last we talked, ISL wanted our 25 pages of comments and fixes for the active transportation plan, focused down to 1 page. So I'm still doing that. I've got it down to about 2 pages so far, and I think I'm actually not gonna boil it down further. I think I'm gonna maybe send them up to 3 pages, and I sort of figure, so they suggested 1 page or they say they have 3 hours of work left in the budget that they can do. So I sort of figured that if everything that I can send them is as absolutely specific as possible, then that should cut down the amount of time and effort on their part. So yeah, at first the 2 pages I have so far were just the most specific comments that came out of those groups, which is largely kind of terminology and stuff. Like there's a lot of terminology comments from the accessibility committee in particular. So those are all really, I figure those should just be very easy. That shouldn't take long at all. But that's also, I don't want to just leave it at that. That would be the really simple fixes. So I'm trying to look at kind of in terms of the vaguer things that were stated amongst the different committee members. I'm trying to just identify the common points and trying to kind of just do the work myself as much as possible to just identify where in the plan we want something, a new section, or where we want a topic addressed that isn't addressed enough, that kind of thing. So I think that was largely the issue, is just that they didn't have the time available to some of our comments and things were so vague it could kind of cause them to have to really just relook at the whole plan. So anyways, yeah, I think I can have that wrapped up pretty quick and kind of meet with Patrick and Daniel maybe as of next week, and then shortly after start circulating this. So my regrets I didn't have anything ready for today, but I think we can have it circulated, get comments back well in advance of the next meeting, I think.
Good. Any other updates from staff? Okay, item 5.3, we had the council update.
Well, I think we've got everything we got.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we mentioned that strategic planning session. This came up and we talked about it and then we released a statement. We can talk about it.
Hmm.
Anything else, John, that we think we've missed?
No, I don't think so. I think your comment about Andrew's suggestion about the group thing, the group chat or get together kind of thing was the only other thing, but we've discussed that, so.
Don't let my pessimism shut it down though.
Couple is, none of the avenues look good,
If,
in terms of getting something back. I mean, even if we can get some help and put together what we think is a great plan. But here, problem statement, and here's what we need in order to fix this. This is the kind of system we need. Then, how do we get it?
my aspirations keep diminishing to this point, I'd just be happy if they could run on time.
Well, you know what? I think everybody would be happy if they could just run on time. And I think you highlighted probably the thing that's most frustrating for everybody involved. So I understand your pessimism, and I haven't lived here as long as any of you people have.
I have one thought on that. If you look at the schedule, and I've been watching sort of day to day where they lose their time. And it's not consistent one or the other, but there's a few runs where the turnarounds, they never make it. It's impossible. Like, even if it's light load and everything goes perfectly, they still lose 5 or 10 minutes. So then I thought, well, maybe the answer is to stretch the schedule out more. But the trouble is, then we're gonna move less people. So, it doesn't really help.
Yeah, I don't think in any of this it's going to be on us to say or in fact, not only is it not on us, they wouldn't listen anyway, to say here's how to fix your schedule. I think Judy's comment that maybe we need to be looking at things from our end. What can we do? Probably very little. At the end of the day, the schedule's the schedule, and they're not going to meet it, and we're all fully aware of that. But I know we've already been down this rabbit hole today, so we don't need to go down it further, I guess, but I don't see a whole lot of benefit or value in us spending time thinking that we can change the way that they operate. I think all we can do is try and find ways to do what we can to make it a little better for ourselves. But
I would like to change their perception of the problem so that
Sure.
they think it's important for
well,
Bowen to run on time. Because I don't
good
get
luck
the
with that,
feeling,
too.
I don't get the feeling that that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you've accurately identified, they don't think it isn't as important to them, no matter what they might tell us in meetings or anything else. It's an afterthought, and we know this.
Yeah. Okay. Item 6, new business. Do we have anything?
No, I just have it, when you said the September meeting is the next one, sometimes the third, kind of keep our radar open for the school people, the parents, about their own connectivity. The beginning of the school year, there are often eruptions of new families discovering the challenges, or there may be like a belt change at, I'm gonna say Rockridge, that maybe the bus won't meet. Whatever's new happening in September for the students
Okay, well,
might erupt.
I don't have my close line of contact with Scott, the old principal
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
I don't even know who the new principal of X is.
Okay.
So maybe I should reach out to the two principals before.
Yeah, you should. And maybe even have like a delegation on the third or something, or invite them, or
They're not coming.
They're not.
First day of school.
they're not busy then. We did, I mean, one of the parent, it was a parent, but he happens to be a principal at Argyle
Yeah,
or Sutherland. And he, or no, it's an elementary school in that area. He said he just changed the bell schedule to suit the buses. The bus schedule. Nothing to do with the ferries, it's in North Vancouver. So we suggested that to Rockridge and they laughed at us. So I don't know why it's laughable. I think it's really good to make it match the ferry and the buses, so the Bowen kids aren't waiting in the rain for 25 minutes in the morning.
well, let's just make sure that the lines of communication are there.
Yeah, the relationships. Okay, just flagging that. It may not be a problem, but it could be.
Question period, there's no public. Next meeting is Tuesday, September 3rd.
Julie
I
Summer.
would move to adjourn the meeting at 7:02.
On time.
Good recovery.
Thanks, Drew and John. I'm gonna turn you guys off now.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you.